Hi, this is Phil from Pens for Doodling, and today I'm going to be looking at the Kaco Retro. Now it says Kaco Green there, but the actual pen is called the Retro, and apparently it's a classical fountain pen. Okay, another pen from China, and again surprisingly inexpensive. Considering the presentation. It comes in this nice box, which honestly I don't generally care about because I don't draw with the box. But the boxes are always handy for pulling out the inserts and actually just using to store various pens. So once I pull the bits out, I'm sure I could probably fit 3 or 4 pens in there. So, you know, that'd be quite handy for being out and about. I'm just going to pull this insert out to see if it is reusable. Yeah, look at that. That's actually quite a nice box to just fit various pens in there. Yeah, you could probably fit, as I say, 3 or 4 pens in there quite comfortably. Certainly 3. So that's quite a usable box. Right, so let's take a look at the pen. Excuse the crinkling, I'm just trying to figure out how to get it out. Okay. So the Retro is, as the name implies, styled after, say, 70s or 80s style pens. Yeah, the colours, even the styles itself, are as supposed to evoke a certain nostalgic feeling. Now, I've got to be honest, I don't care. It's quite smooth plastic, and really the only branding that I can see on here is just there, the K and the G, which I assume means Kaco Green. Okay, so the cap appears to be just a friction fit, and I can see there's actually some metal brackets in there that allow it to grip to the body. So not a particularly airtight seal, I don't think, but it feels quite tight. Now, one thing I immediately don't like about this pen is the fact that it's a hooded nib. In the past, I've had real problems getting these pens properly cleaned out. I like to be able to disassemble a pen completely and remove the feed from the pen as well, because if you've been using inks that have micro carbons in them for particularly black inks, or even shimmer inks that have the tiny bits of glitter in them, sometimes it's helpful to be able to give the feed itself a gentle clean with a soft toothbrush. But of course, a hooded nib, unless I can actually pull the nib out from behind, stops me from doing that. So let's just have a look. The pen is completely plastic. It feels like it's probably ABS, the same sort of plastic that a Lamy Safari is made from. It's got a quite solid finish to it. It doesn't feel particularly flimsy, but this bit here, the transparent thread, okay, that worries me a little bit because it has a slightly sharp feeling to it, and I can tell that that's the kind of plastic that's very brittle. It'd be quite easy to break that, so I'm going to have to be careful when I am putting in the ink cartridge and so on, not to accidentally leverage either side of that, because that will crack quite easily. I don't think that front section is going to come apart, so that means the feed is not going to be accessible for cleaning, which again just confirms my fears about the hooded nib. It's not the end of the world. I can still flush it through, and it doesn't look like there's a great distance, particularly to the capillary at the end of the feed, so it would be quite easy to fit a syringe in there to clean that out. Okay, so let's pop a cartridge in there and see what happens. Okay, good solid clunk there as the cartridge goes in there. Let's screw that back on. Now, the pen, for me, just feels a little bit short and almost not there. It's incredibly insubstantial, very, very light indeed. And I don't like the fact that this section of the pen is just literally sitting there. I would prefer a bit more length to the pen. I'm just going to pop the cap on to see if posting it improves the situation. Now, it posts very securely. Actually, yes, that helps a lot with the weight. That feels much better. And it just gives it that little bit of extra length there, so it sits more comfortably in my hand there. Okay, so let's see if we can get this flowing. Some plastic just came off there. I don't know where that came from. Right. Okay, so let's just see. Nope, nothing so far. Looks like a very fine nib. I'm getting quite a lot of feedback from it, even though there's no ink flowing through it. Now the paper I'm using here is a hammer finish cartridge paper, so I will get more feedback from that than from a standard smooth piece of card or from something like Bristol board. But it certainly doesn't seem very keen to start flowing. I don't really like tapping the nibs, but as long as you're gentle, it's okay. Ah, there we go. Okay, so maybe I was... there we go. Now, the good news is, now the ink is flowing through there, and that's a surprisingly black ink for a supplied ink cartridge. Now the ink is coming through, the feedback is slightly better, but there is still feedback, and that is definitely a fine nib. Okay, so let's take this pen for a spin. Let's just create something loggy. Okay, so quite a scratchy pen to use. It wasn't particularly great for drawing with. I actually found the feedback quite distracting, and it dropped out quite a lot when I was trying to do quick hatching here in the background. These were supposed to be light strokes, but because the ink stopped flowing, I had to resort to putting more pressure on the pen, which honestly kind of spoiled the moment for me to some degree. And yeah, I just found that the control of the pen suffered as a result. It just wasn't particularly nice to draw with. But it's not a horrible pen to use by any means. It's nice to hold. It's very comfortable. Where the posted cap fits against the barrel here didn't cause me any problems whatsoever. Yeah, it's quite comfortable to hold, but drawing with it, not so much fun. In terms of a score, I'd probably give it a 6 or 7 out of 10. It looks nice. It looks kind of cool, actually. And for an everyday writing pen, yeah, I'd probably recommend it. But for drawing, no, I really don't think I would care to draw with that very regularly. It's certainly not when I have other pens that are much more fun to use. The feedback on that nib is just a little bit too much. What I might try doing is I might try polishing that nib on a very fine emery board, see if that improves the feedback. But for a fine nib, that is to be expected. You always get feedback with fine nibs, but just a bit too much feedback there for my taste. Okay, this is Phil from Pens for Doodling.